So I'm going to let you read this. And if it's backwards, it says, it can be done. It can be done. So this is cool because I got this last week. I went to go visit the Reagan Library. And this is one of the things that Ronald Reagan always kept on his desk. It can be done. So simple, right? Such a simple motto. But when you see it, you're like, yeah, it's empowering. So I'm going to start off this session with a question. When you guys were in school, either high school or grammar school, what clique were you in? Because we were all in kind of a clique. Maybe you were in a couple, maybe you weren't really in any, but at one point in your life, you were in a clique. So were you in the rock and roll clique, or the alternative clique, or the jocks, or the smart kids, whatever it may be? So the question is, when you're in that clique, was there a leader? Someone who assumed power, right? Or someone who had power. I got ahead of myself there. But what you see is coming right now. There was a leader in that group, and chances are nobody voted them in when you were in high school. Nobody said, hey, this guy, we're going to vote him in as a leader of our clique. There wasn't a degree or diploma that he earned, or a certain status where he said, okay, now I'm taking over. What happened was he probably just assumed power of that clique. So I started this off really by saying power is not given, it's assumed. It's assumed. And that doesn't mean anything about elections. It doesn't mean anything about powers you may think about. I'm talking about internal power. I'm talking about the power to do the things that you want to do in life. So how do I rephrase this? Power is not granted, it's assumed. If you're sitting there right now and there's a chance that there's something that you want to do. So I'll ask you another question. Think about the best thing that's ever happened to you in your life. The best thing. One of those moments where you just went, whoa, this is awesome. Like, I wish I could repeat this moment and this feeling forever. Maybe it was the first time you fell in love. Maybe you were skiing at the top of a hill on a beautiful day and you're snow skiing. Maybe you were on stage earning an award, or you accomplished something and you said to yourself, whoa, this feels amazing. Okay? One of those moments. So then ask yourself this question. What if that's the best that it gets? There's no more. In other words, that was your shining moment. And from here on out until the day you take your last breath, it doesn't get any better. That's it. Your star's risen and it came and that's it, and then it's just average from here on out. That's scary. And you don't want to think about that, because when you think about that, you're like, no, that's not how I want my life to be. I know I've had good things, but we're always looking to the future. We're always thinking things are gonna happen. That big moment, that big accomplishment, that euphoric feeling, it's gonna happen, and that's only natural. As human beings, that's what we wake up for every day. That's why we work. That's why we exercise. That's why we go to school. We learn things and we communicate, because we always have that hope that the next big thing is out there and that our best days are what? Ahead of us. So when I say power is not granted, it's assumed, meaning you just got to grab that. This rang so true to me when I heard such a simple phrase as power is not granted, it's assumed. Because so many people are out there saying, well, I'm going to do this as soon as what? Is it a certain piece of paper that someone's going to hand you that's going to give you permission to fulfill your dreams? Is it a certain status that's slapped on your back that says, now you can go out there and own the world? Now you can pursue the things you wanted to do? No. Is there a badge that says, hey, you're now granted the power to do whatever it is you wanted to do in your life? No. It's just assumed. You grab it, you do it. Because I know that you know people in your life that were not as smart as you, maybe not as charismatic, maybe not as hardworking, maybe they didn't have anything going for them, but yet they got ahead and they're doing something. For the simple reason is what? They elected to do the do. They didn't wait. So power is assumed, meaning if you're waiting to do it, don't. Because there's never going to be the perfect time. And I love talking about this because we always look at those people who are successful, or those people who are doing what we want to do, or in some form of fashion, and we think, man, they must have really kicked some major butt to get there. Well, they probably did. They probably put some work in. They probably studied, or they put the time or the hours in. But the fact of the matter is, they probably messed up a lot too. In other words, maybe they had a plan, but they didn't wait for someone to come up and say, now get going. Now is the perfect time. They just started to do it. But nobody's really perfect. Even the people that we really look for inspiration are really just kind of regurgitating themes and regurgitating ideas that have been out there. You know, every once in a while comes a great thinker. But most of us are, and I see you guys on Facebook, we're putting quotes up from people that have kind of been refurbished and recycled. So when you think about it, what's holding us back from just being pretty awesome on our own accord? Because you're never going to be 100%. You're never going to go out there with 100% and say, I know it and I'm going to do it, and there's not going to be any mistakes. Because failure is part of the equation. If you don't fail, but you're held back by fear, and that's a very common topic these days, is this fear. But it really is, because what's happening is we second guess ourselves. And I'm going to assume that you are too, because I'm only human and I'm not any different than anybody else. And, you know, when I talk about things that like comedians say that we laugh at, what happens is we laugh because it happens to all of us. Like, yeah, I do that too. That's funny. So when you realize we're all more alike, but we're all sitting there second guessing at some point. Should I do this? Should I do that? What if I do this and I'm terrible at it? What if nobody likes me? What if they laugh at me? My daughter says that all the time, and she's 5. That's her new thing. Dad, what if they laugh at me? Come on. What if they do? Who cares? So I saw this quote in the Bible. It was Revelations 3:16. And the quote was basically, you know, you're neither hot nor cold. You're in between. I will spit you out. In other words, you're lukewarm. I will spit you out. And that resonated with me too. And we had a topic of discussion the other morning on one of my Facebook groups about that, being lukewarm. In other words, anybody who knows me knows I'm extremely opinionated. There's not going to be a subject that I'm going to say, I don't really care. I don't have an opinion. If you present one thing to me or another, I'm either going to say yes or no. And I'm probably going to do it with a lot of passion. So in your own lives, when we're assuming the power and we're not living in this thing where we're waiting to see somebody else go, then you have to ask yourself, are you just being lukewarm? Or are you going head first with passion and power? Because sometimes that's the people who make it. It's not necessarily the most talented ones, but just the people who put their head down and push and push and push, and then they end up in a place of success for no other reason except what we call fortitude. It's what we call sometimes ignorance on fire. And that's not my term. That's a term that's going around a lot. Ignorance on fire, meaning you're just doing something and you don't know really how or why, but your life is in motion. It's got to be in motion. Because we've all had those mornings where we wake up, we're like, oh, I just feel like nothing's going right. I'm not getting the vibe. And you have to create that vibe. And that sometimes is tough, creating the vibe. I tell you what, I've had a lot of indecision lately, but then I think to myself, there is no other way to do it except think to yourself what Ronald Reagan did. It can be done. It can be done. Because it does me no good to sit on the sidelines thinking, well, what if this happens? What if nobody likes me? What if they think I'm stupid? Or what if it fails? Because those three things are, we know the answer to that. The answer to that is pure failure. There's no optimism there. So when you think back and you think, is my life the best thing that ever happened to me already done? Or do I have something to look forward to? You better be thinking you have something to look forward to. I don't care. We look at that commercial, Peaked in High School, Rob Lowe. Remember the commercial for DirecTV? and it was peaked in high school. Rob Lowe, this guy who had all these trophies and all his like Letterman jacket because he was the high school quarterback. We don't want to peak now. I don't care if you're 20, if you're 40, if you're 60. I don't want you to think that the best part of life is over, because there's always terms to reinvent yourself. There's always a chance to say, well, I've done this, I can do it better. Yeah, look at Mary. It's better to have tried and failed than to not have tried at all. It's better to have tried and failed. And sometimes you have to go back to what drives you, the passion inside. Because if you are driven by passion, then nothing can really get in the way, because you can't doubt passion. If you wake up in the morning and you're doubting yourself, and you have this indecision to say, well, am I good enough to do this? Am I smart enough, like Stuart Smalley? Doggone it, people like me. You know, I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by people within the last 5 or 6 years that are in motion, and they're moving and they're doing things. And if I sit back and I look at those people and I ask myself, why? Why are they successful? Some of them are pretty smart. Some of them have, you know, pretty good looking on their resume, you know, attractive people. But doggone it, most of them are just dogs. And when I say dogs, I mean they got a little dog in them. That's a good term. A little fight. You know, like they wake up every morning with a vision, and they don't look at fear and say, well, what if I fail? What if I don't do this? So think about the times in your life when you've learned the most. It probably came after you failed the worst. You know, as a parent, you tell your kids, well, don't do this and don't do this. Don't stand on that chair, you might fall. Don't touch that glass, you're going to cut yourself. And what happens? Kids do it anyway. But when that kid falls off that chair, or he cuts himself on that glass, chances are they're not going to do it again. So they've learned from that mistake. So let's go back to the beginning. I started this off with this quote on Ronald Reagan's desk, "It can be done." And I talked a little bit about power being assumed and not granted, meaning you can't wait for someone to say, it's okay for you to now pursue your dreams. You can't wait for the magic moment, because it's not going to happen. There's no magic moment where everything is perfect and God opens the universe and says, now is your time. Act now. It's little things here and there that kind of tip you off to doing it. So I see so many of my friends on here. I see Corey and Deanna and people that I work with, Paula. And, you know, we all watch each other on this little thing called Facebook, because we are kind of the Truman Show now. This is the world we live in. And we have a little glimpse into everybody else's life. And I would say the best thing to do is take nuggets from other people that you like. Never, ever in the history of mankind has there been a time where you can get more information and learn more sitting on your freaking couch than right now. So there are no excuses. If you're old like me, you remember if you wanted to learn something, you had to learn the Dewey Decimal System. And you had to go into a library and look at the little numbers, and you couldn't find nothing. Now what do? Google. Tell me about this. So if there's something you want to do, something you want to learn, or people you want to learn from, the best thing to do is take little bits and pieces. I like this, I like this, I like this, and then make it your own. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Encyclopedias, man. Encyclopedias. What's up, Chris? You know, there really are no excuses, but I think the thing today that's a commodity today is motivation. That is the commodity. So we eat food in order to move our bodies, but we crave motivation in order to move our minds and move our dreams. And motivation comes in different forms. You know, everybody out there has a different trigger point. What motivates you? Is it money? Is it success? Is it to give back? Is it love? Some people are motivated out of jealousy. And I'm not so sure that's a terrible thing. I mean, more like competition. You know, if you're a competitive person, that's your motivation. Hey, I don't want that person to outdo me, but you got to be able to pat them on the back if they do. So you guys, I want to say it's so nice to see you. I usually don't take enough time to really read the comments on here, and it's good to give back. I crave inspiration. I crave over motivation. Yeah, we're all looking for inspiration. Everybody puts their feet on the ground in the morning saying, what's going to drive me to do something extra special today? Sometimes it's just in the winter, fall's in the air, and the air is crisp, and you're like, man, I want to get outside. I want to take advantage of this beautiful weather. Chris, family drives you, I know. I mean, isn't it inspirational? I mean, to see yourself in your children and to know that if I don't do it, guess what? Nobody does. That's kind of a scary form at some point, because when we were little, you just know your parents are going to look after you and take care of you. You know the food's going to be on the table because your mom's going to put it there. But Chris, what about when you're the provider, right? All of a sudden, when mom's not there putting it for you, but you got the kids looking at you saying, where's our food? That's a little bit of extra pressure to get your butt out of bed in the morning and start kicking some butt. Corey says, makes me do more instead of waiting for someone else to tell me to go. Well, I tell you what, you guys are all inspiring people. Everybody on here, in your own way. You all create a great inspiration, and we're all looking for that wonderful moment where we can say, we've made it. But I don't think that ever really comes. There's no moment where you're like, now I'm here, I've arrived, and I can relax. Sure, you reach a certain financial status, or you reach a place in your relationship where you're comfortable, but can you ever really truly relax? I mean, if you have a great marriage, do you just put it on cruise control and not work at it? No. If you're making a good income, do you ever just put it on cruise control and think it's going to be there for the rest of your life? No. If you're working hard at your body and you're exercising every day and you get it to where you want, do you just say, that's it, I'm good? No. There's always work to be done. Always work to be done. Hey, Sean, how are you? You know, as we're talking about this, we're talking about assuming power. There's power in your life right now. The power to get up and walk and think and take action and grow. Yeah, and Deanna, yeah, if you're not growing, you'll die. You know, they talk about like NFL football coaches and stuff when they retire, how quickly they pass away usually, because their passion is gone. Their drive to live sometimes is gone. If you see one spouse and their spouse dies and they pass away shortly after, it's because their heart, you know, they say it's dying of a broken heart, but their passion and maybe their desire to live is gone. And then you see other people who have just fought and fought and fought and fought to do things. So much could be said for motivation. So much could be said for passion. And that's why we're on here. That's why we listen to one another. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Remember, it was on the desk of Ronald Reagan. I'll say it one more time. And I don't know if this comes up backwards, but you can read it. It can be done. 4 simple little words that if you wake up and just repeat to yourself every day, it can be done. It can be done. It can be done. It will. I was watching the Tony Robbins the other day, and he said, I made this. Talking about himself. I created this. Tony Robbins goes, I used to go for jogs and just say, you are a badass MFer. All the time. Incantations, one after the other. And he goes, you know what? He goes, try going to a jog for an hour and calling yourself a badass you know what, and see how you feel when you're done. You got to talk yourself into it. You got to talk yourself into it. I refuse to say the F word on camera. But Tony's not as scared to do it. If you've ever been to Tony Robbins, you know he drops some F-bombs. Anyway, I'm about to wrap it up. I just want to say, everybody who joined me, thank you so much. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. If you stayed on this long, I really mean it. I want you guys to find passion. I want you to live with it. And you're not alone, because we're all searching. But you got to believe that your best days are ahead of you. That's why we wake up every morning and strap our belt on, put our shoes on, and get to work. Because our best days are always ahead of us. Okay? Have a wonderful day. Love you guys.